Hi everyone, and welcome to this week's TDL Live. I'm RItchey. Adam Ford is not here this evening, so I will be a little off my game. He has the evening off. It is Monday, September 29th, 2008, and of course, as always with TDL Live, you can send in your instant messages to TDL Live via iChat or AOL Instant Messenger. We've got the fishbowl of news, and I will do my best to pontificate upon that news going solo. And also don't forget you can leave a voicemail at 408-627-8242, and we'd love to start playing some of those on the show. So don't be nervous. Don't be nervous. Just tell us what you're thinking or what your questions are. You can also use that number for root access. And speaking of which, before I forget, there will be 2 new episodes of Root Access. Root Access? Maybe? Root Access on the channel tomorrow. You'll be able to check those out. Now then, without further ado, let's get into the news bowl. Let's see what we got. At least I won't get confused about whose turn it is tonight. I usually have trouble with that. Okay, October 3rd. Besides being this host's birthday, thank you very much. No cake or cards, unless they're iTunes cards. October 3rd, it looks like the launch of the iPhone in Russia. And in Russia, iPhone 3G launches you. Sorry. Anyhow, also supposed to be launching at the same time in the Ukraine. It's going to be with a little bit of a price premium, though, as the 8 gig model will run you about 22,999 rubles, which is about $937. Of course, that may have changed after today, but we'll get to the market. The 16 gig model is just under 27,000 rubles at $1,100. Now, those are the prices, even with a signed contract. So it's a little rough in Russia or the Ukraine. And you know, I don't think it's in the news bowl, so I'll just tell you about it now. The iPhone in Hong Kong has launched, and it's unlocked. You can buy it and use it with whomever you want to. It's not locked into a contract. Makes you wonder exactly what gray market we're trying to keep the iPhones out of by having them remain locked through that burdensome process of activation, which supposedly is going to be getting a little better, but more on that in a moment. All right, let's see what we have here. Okay, so it's the end of September, and October will be here before you know it. Of course, maybe it's here by the time you're seeing this, and this is the start of the Comcast data caps. Now, those of you who are, say, running a 24-hour video network on your Comcast connection, it could get rough for you because starting next month, I believe the cap is 250 gigabytes or gigabits of bandwidth per month. Now, I'm going to put a blog story together about this because really what it comes down to is maybe this isn't so much about people who are maybe using peer-to-peer networks. Maybe this is for the person who maybe is thinking about using their Apple TV or their Netflix streaming box or perhaps Hulu to watch television instead of Comcast cable. So, there's always a little bit of pushback against the new technologies and new media, and maybe that's really what this is all about. Let us know what you think. You can send in your instant message to TDL Live, AOL Instant Messenger, or iChat. Again, that number, 408-627-8242. All right. It's just not the same, is it? By myself. It's just not the same. Okay, so here we are. It's September 30th. I'm sorry, it's not September 30th. It's September 29th. Correct. I told you earlier it was September 30th, too, didn't I? I apologize. My humble apology. The show is live. The show is not in the future. However, September 30th is the rumored date. That would be tomorrow, a Tuesday, a good day for new product announcements generally from Apple. The rumors point to perhaps an Apple TV upgrade or change. And for those of you keeping track, this would be Apple TV Take 3. Now, this rumor really started to pick up this week because it turns out some resellers were advised that there would be new material. They were to destroy the current advertising material. Some people are saying this might just be that they want to promote the new season of television or what have you in the ads. And it's no big deal. But it is possible that we might see a new Apple TV tomorrow. Maybe also something with the MacBook Pros and the Mac Mini. MacBook Pro is now on 217 days without an update. The Mac Mini is well over a year. Perhaps Apple TV, Mac Mini, you just squish them together. And maybe that's the product that's going to come out this quarter and hurt profits a little bit. Of course, when we get to the stock price, it doesn't even matter anymore. So we'll get to that in a moment. But keep an eye on the Apple site tomorrow, and of course the Digital Lifestyle. We will have the latest in the event there is exciting news. Even if it's just bland news, we'll cover it. Okay, so as you may know, the folks over at Microsoft have been trying out some new ads. Of course, we had the Seinfeld and Bill Gates experiment, which ended after 2 ads. Now, some Microsoft folks would say, oh, that's all we were going to do. It wasn't going to be a whole campaign. And of course, now we have the I'm a PC ad campaign, which admittedly, it's better than what they were doing. And perhaps if you're in the PC camp, it will at least keep you from defecting, perhaps. But Steve Ballmer, you know him and love him, the man at the helm these days at Microsoft. A while back, he famously said about the iPhone and how it wouldn't get any market, and it was the most expensive smartphone ever, etc., etc. But and then recently, there was a leaked memo from within Microsoft in which Ballmer pointed out that Microsoft had to work to be more Apple-like and to kind of get the competitive advantages that they have. Well, wouldn't you know it, this week, Steve Ballmer changed his position one more time, and he believes that Apple will fail to see any more market share gains, and they will not make any strides in the enterprise market. A couple notes about this. Number one, it's Steve Ballmer. Number two, last month, Ben Gray, this story, by the way, coming to us from roughlydrafted.com, and as always, all the show notes will be available after the show on our forum. Now, that said, from Roughly Drafted, Ben Gray at Forrester Research pointed out last month that the Mac had taken 4.5% of the enterprise market without really trying. There's no advertising in that market, and that's what they've been able to do. 4.5%, you say, that's okay. It's not wonderful. Well, consider this, my friends. Windows Vista, a year and a half after launch, only has 8.8% of the enterprise market. And Vista's been trying. Microsoft's been trying with Vista. So, I'm not sure that Steve really hit the nail on the head there. And also, he says, quote, I'm not saying there isn't a threat, but if we do our jobs right, there's really no reason Apple should get any footprint in enterprise. So, we'll see how that plays out. I hope that surfaces as a video, because then we can run it here on TDL over and over and over again. Not unlike, if you watch long enough, you'll see that we still have Steve on there, Steve Ballmer that is, saying how the iPhone will never catch on. It won't catch on. What's the last thing they said that about? The light bulb? Nobody wants to see. Really? Reflection deck there. Also, for those of you who are keeping track of WiMAX and the next generation of wireless access, this was a pretty big day as the XOHM, pronounced Zoom service from Sprint, launched finally in the Baltimore area. Now, this got off to a rough start about a year and a half ago. It didn't look like the coalition of different companies were going to be able to stick together to bring it to fruition. And it is an odd combination. You have Sprint involved, you have a company called Clearwire, Comcast is in it, Google's in it. It's a really strange group of players. But basically what Zoom gives you is 2 to 4 megabits per second download speed, Now, for those of you using 3G, or for those of you who are curious, iPhone 3G, I don't know, just curious about phones. iPhone 3G, well, just 3G in general, maxes out at about 1.2 megabits per second. They're claiming that with Zoom you could see bursts up to 10 megabits per second. So it could be potentially up to 10 times faster, and they were touting the fact that you could do things like big data transfers and live video, HD video even. And then of course some of the terms and conditions came out and said, you know, you can't really do that, including file sharing of course, but other data intensive programs. So even though you're getting a lot more speed, like a lot of today's providers, it's a situation in which you don't necessarily have unlimited bandwidth, even though you have unlimited speed. It's always a trade-off. But the service starts, you can do a day pass for $10. A little pricey, but not so pricey is the $50 for a month. Now remember, this is something that potentially could replace your modem at home as well, and maybe this is the kind of thing that could bring the cable companies around on the data caps, because if these newer services don't have caps, then competitively Comcast and other cable companies may have to rethink their plans. So it started in Baltimore, just a small section of the city of Baltimore. Additional cities planned for rollout include Dallas, Washington, D.C., and Philadelphia. Now, if you are a Mac user in the Baltimore area, hate to tell you this, but you may have seen it coming. There are not yet any Mac-compatible Zoom modems. Most of them are coming from Samsung at this point, and they do have an Express card modem, but again, being a new launch, and Apple users always have to kind of wait in line a lot of times. It's the same thing here, where there basically isn't the software yet to allow you to use your Mac. So we were ready to hop in the car and head to Baltimore and see how this thing works, but not quite yet. It does indeed seem very promising though, especially at $50 a month. Now it should be noted, the $50 a month plan is a introductory offer, and it's $50 for life as long as you keep the plan. It's generally going to be $65, so you can get in and save money there. Okay. By the way, if you're just joining me, I'm RItchey. Adam Ford is not here this evening. I am flying solo, and I understand now why on the transatlantic flights they take 2 pilots. I understand it all too well. Don't forget, you can send an instant message via iChat, TDL Live, or through AOL Instant Messenger, because really, it's the same thing, let's be honest, at least as far as friends are concerned. 408-627-8242, the phone number. Up next, is the iPhone headed for EVDO? Which, of course, is enhanced voice data operations, probably, is what that means. But that's the network standard that Verizon uses, for example, here in the US. It's not as popular around the world as GSM. So if you look at it, it's like, well, wait a minute, why would Apple be making iPhones that could potentially work for Verizon? Well, a couple things. One, yes, they have the deal here in the US with AT&T, but, and we think that's for 5 years, but other parts of the world, they don't necessarily have that deal, have that carrier locked in with them, that they can only use one carrier. As a matter of fact, previously Tim Cook had said that they're not really locked into the one carrier, one country model. So we could be seeing some competing plans. Also, Verizon is also part of, or in a partnership rather, with Vodafone, which is in other parts of Europe especially, and they do have some EVDO networks. So it would make sense to make the phone for there. And also it's been pointed out over on 9to5mac.com that nobody in Canada is really thrilled with what Rogers has been able to do with the iPhone. So maybe this is to get some more competitors in the Canadian market. So overall, it's good, but don't get excited if you're a Verizon user. I don't think you're going to be able to get an iPhone here in the US that's going to work with your carrier anytime soon. Sorry. I don't make the rules, I just report them. Oh, I'm having trouble grabbing my news. It's a lot of work. harder than it looks. Okay, App Store customer reviews now require a purchase. Is this good? Is this bad? I don't know. So gone are the days of going in and seeing an application, perhaps it's some sort of, I don't know, block breaker, Pong. What's the name of that game? Mac Girl, come on, you know, Breakout. Thank you, Breakout. Some sort of Breakout clone that's $12. You can no longer leave a review saying, "Oh, it sucks. This is $12." You actually have to buy the app in order to be able to comment on it. So, you know, in some respects, it keeps the developers more honest in terms of, you know, not cooking the books with extra comments, but at the same time, it's going to be harder to gauge actual reactions from people who visit the App Store. That's why we're going to open a new section in our forums all about the App Store. Let us know what you think, what apps are a deal, which ones are a ripoff, and that way as a community we can share that with everybody. Look for that. That'll be up early tomorrow morning, early Tuesday morning, so if you're watching this on demand, as they say, it's probably already there, but we want to have that community because, you know, maybe you do feel that all of the breakout kind of games are too expensive, and I think other users should know that, and Apple should know that as well. So we're just doing our part. The more you know. Do-do-do-do. Right? Yes? Is that the music? The more you know? Okay. Thank you. And in the case of free applications, you have to have downloaded it, obviously. Now, what I think is interesting is it'll be interesting to see what happens here with the, what I'm going to call the bait and switch of apps that start out free, and then once they're real popular, they, you know, make them 99 cents or whatever, and it kind of artificially puts them up in the list of most popular apps. So you could have your app be free for a very brief time, get all those faux comments on there, and then put the app up if you're the developer. And then by the time it's up and it's $25, nobody can write in and say, "Oh, it's awful, this is $25," because you already have all those reviews in there. So we'll see how Apple handles that, perhaps on a case-by-case basis. And on a related note, of course, last week we told you that Google's Android operating system was out and about, and that the phone should be available, the first phone, if they're taking pre-orders now. But on their App Store, it's just a free-for-all, for better or worse, where anybody can essentially put up any app. There's no approval process, and one would assume that comments would work the same way. So we'll see. This might be an issue that different companies are going to have to deal with as we move forward. And here it is. Speaking of the G1 Android phone from T-Mobile, now, if you haven't seen one of these yet, basically it's pretty close to the size of an iPhone. However, it has a keyboard on it that slides out, and it's thicker, about 30% thicker than the iPhone, and heavier. Okay, it does have a touch screen and is a little narrower than the iPhone. And Macworld, the UK site for Macworld, went through all the specs and kind of did a side-by-side of the iPhone and the G1 from T-Mobile running the Android operating system. Again, for developers, the question is going to be long-term, do you really want to deal with taking care of 50, 60 different devices and making sure that your software works with those devices versus, obviously, the iPhone, 1 or 2 devices, and you're set. And, of course, Apple's going to make sure that the app works, or it's not going to get on the App Store. So, which is better? Time will tell. You, the consumer, Johnny Q consumer, will decide. Apple iTunes is under attack. Under attack in Norway. Sorry. Under attack in Norway. This is a consumer rights issue. This has been an ongoing concern for Apple and maybe for the shareholders before today. There should be bigger concerns for the shareholders after today. We'll get to that. But iTunes in Norway, the Norwegian government has decided that they feel it's important that any music you buy online is compatible with different devices. Now, of course, on the App Store, or rather in iTunes, the music you buy, generally you only play back on the iPod because most of it has the Fair Play DRM on it. Fair Play, of course, an ironic name for DRM. However, there are the AAC tracks you can buy that do not have that on them, and those would work on other devices. So it'd be interesting to see what happens in Norway, because even though it's a tiny country and would seem like it wouldn't have this much influence, when this is all said and done, it could indeed influence how iTunes works around the world. And maybe it could be the end of DRM. It won't be. Come on, you know it won't be. Let us know what you think. 408-627-8242 is the number to call. Leave your message. We can't just put you on live. I mean, you know what you're going to say. We can't risk it. It's too risky. All right, up next, Trend the Bull. Apple stock. Apple stock. Where to begin? Rough day for the market overall. Obviously, the single largest point drop for the Dow in the history of the stock market. Is that correct, Macro? Yes, Macro verifying that. And the Apple stock, you would expect, would be hit as part of that, but it was kind of a double whammy today, because also along with that was about a 15 to 17% reduction in the actual value of Apple stock, based in part on two analysts who downgraded the stock target price significantly down into the 130, 140 zone or less, which obviously is a lot less than anybody has been forecasting before today's dates. Now, part of what's pushing this obviously is the market. However, when you look at a lot of businesses, including Apple, the financial side of things is strong. So you would think this would be one of the first stocks to bounce back. Again, I'm not a stock advisor, but if I could right now, I would purchase more stock. I would purchase stock if I could, if I were you. But I'm not you, so you decide what to do. But those analysts who are lowering their target price, that's due in part to some news that Apple is reportedly lowering the volume of iPhone production. Now, if somebody making vehicles, let's say, lowers their production number, you as an analyst logically can say, they're not going to sell as many of these, we should be concerned. But the thing you have to factor in with Apple is if they're doing something like ramping down production of the 8 gig iPhone, it might really mean that we're going to see a 32 gig iPhone, a 16 gig and 32 gig iPhone a little bit down the line. Maybe that's the mystery product that's going to have a lot of transition cost this quarter. I don't know, this quarter is going by pretty quickly. We have to see this device soon. So, I think it's partially obviously the market. Everybody got hit. And then the extra hit that Apple took, it closed at 105, a little over 105 and down below 103 in after hours trading today. And hopefully by the time you see this, if you're not watching it live, we'll look back and laugh when the stock was 105. Do you remember where you were when the stock was only 105? What a glorious time that will be. But, so we'll see, maybe if they have announcements as soon as tomorrow or next week, maybe that's enough to start turning things around. And of course, we're getting close. Usually October is the time frame for any kind of announcements to get ready for the holiday season. After about October 15th, you're not going to hear about any new products from Apple. They'll be locked until Macworld in January. So it's a bit of a downer. But remember, what if you were Steve? Steve Jobs has a lot of money in this company. Has lost hundreds of millions of dollars over the last few days, but I'm sure that he has confidence, as I do, although it's wavering, because if you go back and watch old TDL lives, I believe the stock was at 140 or 150, and I said, oh, it can't go any lower than this. So I will not repeat that today. Just know that it's at 103. If this were to continue into 6 or 7 months of the stock price being depressed and the rest of the market came back up, then you got to start to worry about, well, what if somebody tries to take over Apple? We could start to see some sort of hostile takeover bid or something like that. But let's not go through that nightmare scenario. I'm sure everything will be fine. They already took Adam. What could go wrong? So anyhow, there you are. Don't forget, more new route access tomorrow. Next Monday, I believe Adam will be back. It'll be the same fun and frivolity that you're used to on Monday nights. And thank you if you're a football fan. Thank you for forgetting about the Monday night game. We certainly do appreciate it. And I will talk to you next week. Until then, congaloosh, everyone.